Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer Payne and I'll be talking about Erik Erikson today. I first studied Erikson and learned about him in my first ever education class here at Liberty University. When studying education and how it was founded or the different psychological developments, you often study Erikson because he was one of the first ones to come up with different identity crises and how we go through life answering these certain questions and about ourselves. So a little bit of background information on Erikson. He grew up in Germany. He was raised by his mother and stepfather. This might seem like meaningless information, but it's actually very meaningful. He thought that he didn't understand himself or didn't have a quite good identity because he didn't know who his real father was. So this really started and sparked his interest in trying to figure out how people understood themselves. He dropped out of school. He did not finish school. He was asked by a colleague to come teach because he seemed like a great person to teach. So he did that and he received 2 certificates. And then after that, even without having a bachelor's degree, he became a professor at both Harvard and Yale, which is crazy because you would think that they would want somebody, with degrees, but since he was such a good teacher, they just hired him on. Erikson developed what was known as the 8 psychosocial stages, and he coined the phrase identity crisis. So identity crisis was not a thing until Erikson coined that idea. His 8 stages are, and I'm probably going to have to read them all. Number 1 is oral sensory, which is birth to 18 months, and then you ask the question trust versus mistrust. Number 2 is muscular, and that's 18 months to 3 years, and you ask the question autonomy versus shame/doubt. 3 is locomotor, 3 to 6 years. It's an initiative versus guilt, independence. 4 is latency, that's 6 to 12 years. That's industry versus inferiority, school. 5 is adolescence. This is 12 to 18 years. This is identity versus role confusion. And 6 is young adulthood. This is 19 years to 40 years. And this is intimacy versus isolation. 7 is middle adulthood. It's 40 to 65 years. And this is generativity versus stagnation. And then 8, which is the last one, maturity, is 65 years to death. So anywhere from 65 years to early 100s. And this is integrity versus despair. Each stage, we answer a different question. So each stage has a question. So when we first start out at birth to 18 months, we kind of ask the question, can we trust people? And if we feel like we can trust people, we find this trust usually within our mother, we have trust. But if we do not find this trust within our mother, then we have mistrust. And that's how his 8 stages work. To go into the middle of it, 5, which is adolescence, 12 to 18 years. This is identity versus role confusion. This is where the identity crisis comes into effect because we realize that we have real roles in society, such as being a child, being a student, being a worker if you're working. We have these different roles, and then we have to find out who we really are. And then if we have people like our parents or our peers trying to convince us of who we are or mold us into something we're not, we have role confusion. But if they allow us to go out into the world, find what we are ourselves, then we have identity. And then the last one with maturity, that's 65 years to death. This is where we are looking back at our lives. We're sitting back, we're slowing down. We want to see how our lives were. How did we do is basically the question we are asking at this stage. And that is ego, integrity versus despair. So if we did really well, we would have ego, integrity. Or if we feel like we have not done very well, we would have despair. Erikson, during doing all of this stuff and finding all his findings, he was influenced by his young life and not knowing his biological father. He was also influenced by fraud and how he developed his 8 stages. He went beyond the fraud focus on dysfunctional behavior to pursue the ways that the normal self is able to function successfully. So he broadened on fraud's ideas, and fraud was one of his main mentors. Nowadays, we cannot study the development of education or the stages of growing up without discussing Erikson. I feel that Erikson is very real life situations. Like, we can look into our own lives when we were young in our teenage years trying to figure out who we were. I think that he really goes into real life situations, and I believe that his 8 stages are true, and where we do ask ourselves questions, and if we answer them versus what he has on his model. I do believe that one of his critiques is that, like, when we're young, birth to 18 months, if we do not receive our trusting with our mother, then we do not go on to the second step, that we have to receive trust and to really go on to the second step. And I do not believe that's true, just because of my own personal experiences, but maybe some people would think that's true. That's just my main critique of Erikson and his stages. But I do believe he is worth studying and learning about the foundations of education and psychological development. And I hope that y'all enjoyed this very inadequate presentation on my cell phone, and I look forward to talking to you guys more. Thank you.